Hey, good Tuesday evening, everyone. State Representative Brad Halbrook here, along with the Illinois Freedom Caucus Chairman, Representative Chris Miller, and the Director of the Illinois Freedom Caucus, Collin Mosley. Welcome, gentlemen, to Tuesday night roundtable as we kind of discuss the events, the glorious events of last week in Springfield. So, gentlemen, welcome. I know we got a lot to cover. Do we just want to get right into it, Director Collin, and kind of get to the slides and kind of start talking about what happened?
Yeah, I think before we start, we need to maybe, viewer caution advised. Just the things coming up to review from last week. It feels like a disaster response after action report, like a tornado's just come through and leveled a town. So just beware.
Yeah, we should have called for emergency response. It seemed like it was going off the rails there, Chris, in the wee hours of Sunday morning. So yeah. All right. So what happened at midnight in Springfield? You know what they used to tell me, Chris and Collin? Nothing good goes on after 9 o'clock in Springfield. I don't know if that was 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. It began to think that nothing good goes on in that 24-hour window.
Yeah, you're right.
I'd say that's probably a little more accurate.
All right, let's get into slide one. Budget week, the most dangerous time. You know, we got there, we're sworn in January the 8th. We have nearly 5 months to work through this. And there was already discussions last November about the budget situation or the financial situation of the state of Illinois. And of course, guess what happened? The budget pops out in the last 24, 30 hours of the spring session. Of course, the big push is it's got to get done by midnight, May 31st for the 60-vote threshold. If it goes after midnight, it takes 71 votes, which they ultimately had, I believe, which was kind of unusual. Last year, they barely got the 60 votes. But yeah, I'll just throw it open. Chris, do you have any thoughts here about what happened with the budget week and the 1 and 2 and 3 a.m. stuff?
Oh, I thought as far as the budget was concerned, we saw a lot of the government, by the government, and for the government. That's the way it all felt to me and the way it shook out.
Right. Well, it seems like that our jobs have changed. Instead of representing the people to the government, now we represent the government back to the people, because that's the way the show gets run in Springfield.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. It's a disgrace. Every single year it's a disgrace. And every year I think maybe not this year, and I'm always proven wrong.
Right. Well, amendment after amendment, bill number change after bill number change, rule suspension after rule suspension to get these bills heard on short order was just kind of the way it went all week, and it got worse late into Saturday and into Sunday morning.
Yep. They've got, what always baffles me, Brad, is we're in Springfield starting in January, and somehow every year stuff has to end up waiting until the last 72 hours of session. The most important stuff waits till the last. It makes no sense. But they choose by design to do it this way, so we have little time to scrutinize, little time to argue. Everything is rushed, and so therefore it justifies their limited debate, and it's just shameful.
Yeah. Guys, I think I've heard some of these states around the nation, don't they have a 60 or a 90-day spring session? Texas, I know, only meets every other year. How are they able to get it done in a much more efficient manner than Illinois?
Well, I think that there's probably not a whole lot of foolishness that goes on. I mean, just think about how many press release bills that we had to look at, and how many resolutions we looked at, and how many task force we looked at that absolutely do nothing except to let the representative go back to their district and pretend like they really care about their people.
Right. Exactly. All right. Maybe we need to go to the next slide. There we go. So this is just kind of some of the a list of some of the really bad bills, gun bills. Gentlemen, I'll sort of SB 8 and HB 850 had to deal with kind of guns storage and the like. Weigh in on this and let us know what's going on there.
Well, the gun bills are both of them consistent with what we've seen out of Springfield the last few years, which is if you're a law-abiding gun owner, the Democrats hate you. And especially SBA. If you want to take your kid hunting and teach him a life skill, he or she a life skill, you're going to be scrutinized and penalized because these bills are being written by people that wouldn't even probably tell you the difference between a revolver and a semi-automatic handgun. And yet they want to legislate your rights away. So the nuts and bolts of this bill is it's the government coming into your home to tell you what you can and cannot do with your firearm.
Right, exactly. The next bill, this HB 3637. So if there was a drug, if I understand this correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong. So if there had been a drug or not that had been approved by the FDA, but it was not currently approved by the FDA, if the World Health Organization approved that drug for use, Illinois was going to allow it to happen. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the way I understood it. And I mean, it's just incredible to me that people didn't learn anything from COVID and all the bad mitigation that actually proved out to be just smoke and mirrors and just a big game for those people.
Yeah. Wasn't the World Health Organization the same group that said ivermectin was just kind of horse paste, even though it was a Nobel winning drug?
Right.
They called ivermectin, the one that was literally saving lives, they called it horse paste.
Exactly.
Same organization.
Right. Well, we are funding China's takeover. We're giving their companies money. I guess we ought to just go ahead and take their health advice too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The next one was prescription drug changes. This, I believe, had to deal with the local independent pharmacies, right, Collin, was what this bill was, to kind of help provide them in a little better situation than what they had dealt with over the last several years. The local independent pharmacies had been calling for some changes to the legislation because they were kind of getting the short end of the stick when it come to the way these pharmacy or the pharmacy benefit managers were carrying on and doing business.
Yeah, this seems to actually be a positive change. We might do a deeper dive on it in the future. I think the intention of it has to deal with PBMs, and basically it is to lower prescription drug prices by sort of cutting out people that were trying to make money in the middle.
Right.
So, maybe not a totally terrible idea. One of the few things in Springfield. We might do a deeper dive on it in the future, but it was a big ticket item in Springfield.
Right.
Lots of dollars were spent on both sides of the issue.
Right. This one here, the laser hair removal insurance coverage for transgender. That has got to be, Chris, the epitome of a bad idea. I mean, anytime Springfield mandates something, but this is really a bad idea.
Well, there is a reason why we call that the bad idea factory, is because they just don't disappoint us when it comes to bad ideas.
Right. Exactly. So let's talk about some things that kind of got stalled out. The homeschool bill is on third reading in the House, but appears to be stalled. That's a good thing. Of course, we're always fearful that, late Saturday night, they're going to pop it out as an amendment to something else. But right now, that bill's not moving. So hopefully it will continue to be bottled up.
Yeah, it can't be. It cannot be overstated the value in the complete and total uprising of the homeschool families and advocates and allies to make that possible.
Right.
One of the best showings we've ever seen in recent history on an issue. And so those of you that have been standing with homeschool families, or if you are one, it paid off.
Right.
But the fight's not over either. Nothing's ever dead in Springfield. That's why Dan Caucus had to retire. Nothing ever dies in Springfield.
No.
Yeah.
No, but it's very true. I mean, we have to have a tip of the hat to all the people, people from the private school and the homeschools that actually showed up and let their voices be heard. And because they engaged in the process, they were able to shut this down.
Yeah. Well, it was at least 2 days or 3 days. Was it 3 days that the halls were full of homeschool families? Yeah.
Well, it was several days. I know that. I can't remember.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, don't wear out. Don't give up because the fight's not over yet. So, assisted suicide, another hot topic. A lot of debate, a lot of passion speeches from both sides of the aisle, more so from the other side about families and friends that have went through some kind of a similar procedure in a different state. More questions, Chris and Collin, coming out of this bill than not. It did pass out of the House, but is stalled out in the Senate. I don't know if they just didn't have the votes, they didn't want to deal with it, or all the above. What's your thoughts here about how that bill went through?
Well, one thing that we know that they tried to do right off the bat, and I knew they would do this, is they tried to sanitize this and to try to explain it away that it wasn't what it was. And that's typically what they do on something that's really bad. And, I mean, it would be an extension of our state's complete moral depravity to decide that they're gonna play God and decide who lives and who dies.
Right, exactly. This next bill was actually the transit bill for the Chicago transportation, all the public transportation in and around Cook and the Collier counties. Was going to put on $1.50 per package delivery tax. We call it the Amazon delivery tax, $1.50 per package. The bill stalled out in the Senate, did not make it to the House. I think it was just getting too late in the weekend. They were going to need 71 votes to get it passed, so it stalled out. I don't think this bill is dead and long gone. This is probably going to show up the next time we get back to Springfield. But you talk about a really, really bad idea. This has got a lot of folks stirred up on this delivery tax, Collin.
Yeah, well, it made Chris so mad he just couldn't handle it anymore. He had to leave. If you haven't noticed, Leader Chairman Miller is back in the field farming. That's why you see him moving around. So he may join us back up, but a few long days in Springfield, he's back on the farm with his family. So a terrible idea. A bill, a tax that affects every single family, and so what it's all about is bailing out Brandon Johnson's miserable failure to manage anything in Chicago, including transportation. Senator Chesney did an excellent speech on this when it passed the Senate, but yeah, it's a total bailout. Taxpayers in Effingham County and Coles County and everywhere in between are going to be paying money that's going to go right to Chicago.
And I think the price tag on this was $700+ million, wasn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what their fiscal cliff is. And so when you take $1.50 per delivery, I mean, I think about how often my wife orders Amazon packages. I might be able to fund one red line on my own.
We probably ought to not talk about that. So, hey, again, we got a lot going on this slide, and I just want to be sensitive to everybody's time. So, higher ed DEI funding formula, that was kind of a hotly debated one about changing the funding formula there for higher ed to kind of mirror what goes on at K-12. It seems to be stalled out also for now. And I think it's got some real constitutional challenges anyway.
Well, one of the things that
Go ahead, Chris.
that they need to keep in mind, lose a lot of their federal funding with economic disaster for our state.
Right, exactly. All right, what do we got next? Yeah, so the budget bill dropped 24 hours, and just a few hours before the vote was taken, just lots of amendments, $55 billion in spending, $2 billion bigger budget than it was last year, which again, Chris, you and I, the Freedom Caucus has highlighted this, over $15 billion increase in the budget in 6 years since Governor Pritzker's been there, nearly a 40% increase in spending under Governor Pritzker. And we see all the DEI spending. We had the press conference back earlier in May about the NGO stuff, $1 billion worth of pork. And guess who got $40 million for a school in their district? Speaker Welch.
All right.
And funding all the bad things throughout. I mean, this budget could be in a much better shape if it wasn't for all the bad ideas.
Well, exactly. I mean, the math isn't that hard. I mean, you guys did a press conference 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, and the tax increases, tobacco, digital fee, sports betting, many other items, and of course they're kind of putting out there a tax amnesty.
I don't think
45.
you guys heard it. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, they've got a 45-day tax amnesty program this fall, and so that's going to be interesting to see. They're expecting several $100 million to come in from that, so it'll be interesting to see whether that materializes or not.
Yeah, well, look at the stuff that's in here. As they claim that it's a tight budget year, the Democrat leaders talk about how difficult this budget was, and yet hundreds of millions for DEI, NGOs, immigrants, green energy, legislative. So they obviously they talk about what cuts they made. Well, what'd you cut, folks? I mean, look at all the waste. So obviously, the Democrats are incapable of showing any fiscal restraint. They just want more from you. And again, as the red letters say, we may come back this summer and ask for more.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And what's interesting is the amount of money they're continuing to spend on immigrant welcome centers and all the illegal immigration, and yet border crossings are down over 90% due to the Trump administration, and they continue to pour money in it like there's no tomorrow, and then maybe there will be no tomorrow. But anyhow, so a couple programs coming up this Saturday in Effingham, I believe. And then next Tuesday is the Freedom Caucus is going on the road, going to be in Geneva at the Pints and Politics. Collin, what's going on with these two events here?
Yeah, so this Saturday is a ballot chasing event. Just trying to prepare to get a little more creative and get a little more winsome in campaign season coming up here. And so just would love, this is an educational event about vote by mail and ballot chasing, and encouraging people to get trained, to be familiar with it, so we can send people all across the state to engage in that. The Democrats have been doing this for years. They're really good at it. We're losing because we refuse to adapt. And so good training. Hope to see you there Saturday morning at 9 a.m. at the Effingham County GOP, the old Truckers Pub.
Okay. All right. And then a week from Tuesday night at Geneva, a little Freedom Caucus Town Hall. That'll be fun. We were up there 2 years ago, and it was a good group. And so it'll be good to be a part of that again.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope to see you there.
All right. And freedomcaucus.org, and of course the Substack, and that continues to grow. And with that, that's all I have.
Well, we lost Leader Miller, but he's out in the hayfield somewhere. So
yeah, exactly. Well, it's we got weather moving in tonight, and so he's trying to get stuff done before the rains come again. So with that, thank you all for joining us. Appreciate it. And as always, we would appreciate that you'd like, share, subscribe, and follow our content to help us overcome the algorithmic gods of the big tech overlords. Collin, cue the outro.